deserts of Arabia and Africa on the threshold of the 21st century, full of stark contrasts. From vast oil fields to endless stretches of sand where time stands still. Oases where water, not oil, is the most prized natural resource. Water is still carried in animal skins, like these ones being filled at a well in the Sahara on the Nigerian-Mali border. The Sahara, the world's largest desert. In one of the more isolated regions of Mauritania, we found the temporary villages of the last Moors, the blue nomads, cousins of the more noble Tuaregs. Travelers to this barren area can often come across sights that are profoundly unsettling. Links with a nomadic culture that has almost disappeared, a barbaric world. In this case, we stumbled on a public execution. The man whose ankle is being fettered is a thief and rapist. According to the Islamic code, which these nomads still apply to the letter, the punishment is death. Sentenced by his fellow tribesmen, the condemned man is ignominiously stripped of his ritual blue costume and, reclothed by his relatives to reduce his suffering, left to die of thirst and hunger and exposure to the heat of the desert. The blazing fires of an oil field, an island of high technology, are not far from the camps of the desert's last nomads, and yet they are separated by hundreds of years of history. Our route takes us into the heart of the Sahara. After hundreds of miles of tarmac road along the southern borders of Algeria and Libya, we head into open desert with no signs of a road or even a track. Our guide on this trek into one of the most remote corners of the great desert is a nomad turned truck driver. Our destination is here, among the rocks of the Adjer. Our objective is to find traces of the first desert nomads, who are reputed to have lived here 5,000 to 6,000 years before the birth of Christ. The evidence we find dates back to before the Sahara became a desert. These are the remains of a nomadic shepherd. In these cave dwellings, we find not only evidence of day-to-day existence, but above all, these rock paintings that illustrate a complete way of life. Paintings that were the equivalent for these primitive people of our home movies. Experts in prehistoric art have made exhaustive studies of these drawings by the ancestors of our guide. A tribe of shepherds who recorded themselves on these rock walls, praying, hunting, and on the move. Driving their flocks from one pasture to the next in a bountiful, fertile world. Today, that same world is an unproductive, hostile environment. Hostile for livestock, for shepherds, for camel drivers. In this area, a number of nomads have become truck drivers, like the one to whom we owe this trip to the edge of the Dankalian Desert. These drivers have inherited from their ancestors the most noble aspect of their race, instant companionship with a fellow traveler. In this case, a young Frenchman who works for an international organization. He is a volunteer who travels around this part of the world, checking on the desert's relentless expansion. His job is to record the sand's advance on the north, south, east, and west boundaries of the Sahara. A grueling, laborious assignment, but one that is an indispensable link in the projects of the FAO and other organizations that are working to stop the desert devouring yet more cultivable land. A job that is not without risk. In Africa alone, it has been calculated that every 6 months, 2,500 acres are lost to the desert. Every mile of the front line in this inexorable advance is kept under constant surveillance by satellites in space and by expert eyes on the spot. Elaboration of data and photographs will one day lead to a solution that will allow man to prevent the drying up of wells and waterholes. One fact among many brings the problem home with terrifying clarity. It has been calculated that in the southern region of Africa's Sahel Desert, 3,000 wells have dried up between 1970 and 1985. No water is inevitably synonymous with no life. These are another group of families of the world's surviving nomads. Their tents are evidence of a solitary existence in a barren land. What is the day-to-day life of these people like? The tent, is the center of their universe, a universe in which the woman dominates. All the members of each family join in the struggle for survival, from the youngest to the oldest. Livestock are the most prized of all possessions. On the day of Eid el-Kabir, the most important Muslim holiday, the fattest goat is slaughtered as a sacrifice to God. And the nomadic herdsmen gorge themselves on its flesh, a rare treat. In some cases, Bedouins find jobs on the outskirts of the cities that have grown up on the edge of the desert. Some are employed by oil-rich sheiks as breeders, trainers, and keepers of falcons. Falcons are a symbol of power for the lords of the desert, and once their hunting companions. Hunting has always been a favorite sport in the desert, and falconry has had moments of great popularity. Today, the falcon is above all a symbol of pride and nobility. On nights like this, the temperature in the Sahara can sink to around freezing. The wind molds the topographical features of all the world's deserts. It can erode even the hardest rock, creating weird shapes that would seem more at home on the moon. These wind-sculpted shapes have a mystical significance for the Bedouins, on whom they have an almost hypnotic effect. This was particularly true for nomadic tribes in the days before the preachings of Mohammed. It was not unusual for men to become hermits and worship rocks with particularly strange shapes, in the belief that they were manifestations of supernatural desert beings they called jinn. It is probably still possible to find examples of similar superstitions among the people that roam the desert today. But now, we must leave Arabia as we set out on a search for evidence that will remind us that it was from this desert that the Muslim faith was to spread throughout the world. The great force of Islam lay in the horse-borne fighting men of the nomadic tribes. A force that reached its greatest strength when allied with groups of warriors from other deserts. It was the ancestors of these men on horseback who created the Islamic empire that stretched from Iraq to Morocco and up into Spain. We have come this far in search of evidence of a factor that, united with 100 others, played a key role in uniting the conquering army. A common will to survive that helps the desert nomads overcome thirst and hunger. Whatever the tribe he belongs to, the Bedouin delights in showing his capacity to survive in the face of adversity, above all, water scarcity. For these nomads, life is an everyday challenge that gives them the will to fight. A challenge that has taught them to fight violence with strength. A strength that lies in the use of weapons. Weapons from a bygone era, and ultra-modern firearms that the desert nomads use today with deadly precision when they play key roles in local revolutions. Traditional weapons, such as the flashing sword blade, are now used only on festive occasions. In this case, the swords belong to the Pakhtuns, the proud nomads of Pakistan. And then there are the play weapons, like these staves used in demonstrations at fairs, such as this market in the Sudan. Weapons and strength, fear and violence. Factors used for centuries by the lords of the desert to control the farming communities of the oases. Evidence of this violence can still be found in northern Cameroon. Here, in medieval times, groups of nomads created small but powerful centers of territorial control, known as lamidati. The nomads in question were black Arabs, and today their descendants continue the tribe's traditional show of strength based on well-armed horsemen wearing chainmail armor. Ethnologists call these nomadic warriors cataphracts, a name related to the particular type of armor they wear, which is identical to that worn by the Crusaders from Europe. According to local legends, the forefathers of these tribesmen fought in the Holy Land against the Crusaders and brought home captured enemy uniforms. In any case, they dress like this once a year, on the day they collect taxes for their lord, the Lamido, an hereditary sultan who is employed by the state of Cameroon as a tax collector. As a fringe benefit, he is allowed to withhold a substantial percentage to cover his expenses. The Lamido is responsible for the taxes of a specific area of the country, and he relies heavily on the help of his warriors. When they are ready to leave to collect taxes in outlying villages, they congregate in front of the Lamido's house, and he sends them on their way, group after group. This colorful ceremony seems to be right out of the Middle Ages. In village after village, farmers and shepherds pay their taxes. The sight of the awesome warriors who arrive in the night in their sinister armor is so frightening it stifles all complaints.
صار الايام دي صار ربيع وصرنا في الربيع
Group after group is dispatched by the Lamido until every village in his area has been covered. An age-old tradition that has never changed, because in this bush area south of the Sahara Desert, far from the prosperous cities of modern Africa, fear of the cataphracts that was born over 600 years ago has never died.
ان شاء الله واجد غنام ان شاء الله كريم تيجي تصير غنام ولد مرتين صار الايام دي صار ربيع وصرنا في الربيع يولد مره كل مره تصير ان شاء الله واجد غنام ان شاء الله كريم تيجي تصير غنام الله كريم ربيع الدنيا ربيع
The annual event ends with a display by all the groups of warriors when they return to their lord's residence. The Lamido is pleased by their homage. He watches the show sitting near the straw hut of his forefathers on the porch of his modern air-conditioned home. Lamidor's living quarters may have changed in the course of time, but not his authority. He wields the same power as his ancestors did when these words were first uttered by those who sang their praises and who still sing his. O you, Lamidor, stronger than the lion. O you, Lamidor, more handsome than the gazelle. As he listens, he cannot hide his satisfaction. Secure in the knowledge that next year and for countless years to come, his warriors will go forth to spread fear and collect tax money for him. They are the last aggressive nomads in the boundless land of deserts and savannas.